Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In this video we're talking about Nintendo Switch, 3DS, Xbox, and more. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off here talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on Android with Skyline, and Skyline's got a couple of brand new updates. If you head to skyline-emu.1 and click on download, you'll see here at the time of filming we're on version 2191. They released 4 different versions of this emulator today. So in these 4 different versions, there were a bunch of updates. The first one here is on-screen controls rework. Buttons can be aligned to grid. Button size can be adjusted individually. Better default position, but you might need to reset buttons to default to see it. Separate L3 and R3 buttons that are disabled by default. And toned down haptic feedback by a little bit. They've also fixed a whole bunch of crackling audio. They've fixed graphics in Crysis and Splatoon. And Animal Crossing now goes in game. A lot of these were Skyline Edge changes that have made their way over to the mainline version. And speaking about Edge, the paid testing early access version of Skyline Edge also got a brand new update today. Edge version 58 dropped, and this one fixes some Edge 57 audio regression, so the audio should be better in Edge 58. And speaking about testing builds, next up we're talking about 3DS emulation with Citra, and Citra Canary just got a couple of brand new updates. So in Canary version 2439, you can now adjust the screen's refresh rate, and they say this option is useful for the few 3DS titles that support variable refresh rate. However, this will not make a 30 FPS locked title run at a higher refresh rate. On Android, they've cleaned up overlay controls and avoided triggering touchscreen when a button is pressed. And in Canary 2441, it looks like it's getting a little bit more accurate, and there's a ton of bug fixes here. And for those of you wondering about Vulkan, which seems to be a pretty hot topic lately, Vulkan hasn't made its way over fully just yet. It's in the process of making its way over, and once it gets over, they've said there's going to be huge performance gains, so be patient. Next up, we're talking about the Xbox, the actual console, and this project is extremely interesting. It's called Project Steller, and they say it's the world's most powerful add-on for the original Xbox. Steller OS is the first completely legal re-implementation of the retail Xbox BIOS. Anyways, Project Steller is about a $100 mod, and version 1.0.2 of the firmware just released. This one has a whole bunch of bug fixes, including fixing issues related to saving settings. If you are curious about this one, I'll drop a link in the description below. Moving on, and still talking about modded consoles, kind of, and we're talking about Melon DS on the PS2. Yes, on GitHub, someone's got a PS2 port of Melon DS. Absolutely horrible performance. They say it's just a proof of concept, but at the same time, it's kind of hilarious. Interestingly enough, it doesn't work on an actual PS2, but it does work within PCSX2, and it's also not an April Fool's joke, although it was released on April Fool's. If you are curious about this one and wanted to mess around with it, you absolutely can. It's available on GitHub, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Next up, we're talking about Duckstation, and Heat here, who has been working on a very special rollback netcode edition of Duckstation, is now working on a Spectator mode for the emulator. This one is extremely interesting. It's currently a work in progress, but they say it's coming soon. If you are curious about this one and possibly wanted to read up more about it, I'll drop a link to Heat's Duckstation fork in the description below. It's free and it's open source. And speaking about stuff on GitHub, next up we're talking about Atari Jaguar emulation with BigPEmu. And Mega Bezels are now on GitHub. Like everything else I talk about, the link to this will be in the description below, so feel free to check it out. Moving on, and we're talking about Xbox. Not the old one, but the new ones. Anyways, here, if you were looking at expanding your storage on this, you might want to hold off just a little bit. There's an article over on Video Games Chronicle, which I will link to in the description below, and it looks like Western Digital is coming out with a 1TB option that's about $40 cheaper than Seagate. Next up, we're talking about some ROM hacking, specifically MK Deception on the PS2. And it looks like someone has successfully ported over Frost from MK Unchained on the PSP to, well, PS2. It's worth pointing out that romhack might not be the best word for it. It's a PC-only modification to the PS2 version. If you are curious about this one, I'll drop a link to the GitHub in the description below. But speaking about ROM hacking, and next up we're talking about a ROM hack of Goof Troop on the SNES. There's a brand new ROM hack called Le Goof Troop, or Le Goof Troop, I'm not quite sure on how they want to pronounce it. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. This one has redesigned levels and a higher emphasis on puzzles. If you're interested in the original game, you might be interested in this one. And last up here, we're having some fun with Fightsticks of the week over on Reddit Fightsticks. And this first one here, $500 later. That's a lot more than I'd expect to pay to create your own fight stick, but at the end of the day here, it does look really, really good. I'm guessing they spared no expense whatsoever when they're putting this one together. The end result is great. Someone had a bit of fun here on April Fool's to create some extra big panels for the Snackbox Micro XL. You could almost call it the Snackbox Macro XL. Here's a pretty cool Flopbox V4 in a custom acrylic case. And this is someone's first attempt at creating their own stickless controller out of a pencil box, and I think it turned out great. And the artwork on this one is awesome, and they also have those elusive gamer finger buttons. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.